Right, welcome everyone. Thank you. I think Andean Silver is a relatively new company to the scene. We've had the asset since February. We identified it previously. See, most people probably know the company as Mitre Mining. We changed the name probably about last month to Andean Silver. We bought it, so we'll get straight into it. Yep, don't need that. So the project itself is a long history project. It was originally built in 1994 by Core Mining in southern Chile. They mined to about 2010, GFC hit, it then moved on to Mandalay Resources and into our hands after that. I think the key takeaways that I want to give you at the end of this presentation that you'll go through will be, we have the scale, we have the grade, we have the resource, we have the infrastructure, and critically we have the support from everyone behind the project as well. So going in now, the project itself, as I said, it's already established. We have a 500,000 tonne per annum float circuit. We have permitted TSFs. We have environmental permits in place. Interestingly, it was the very first environmental permit ever done in Chile voluntarily at the time. So it still exists today. Excessive water rights for 800 litres a second of fresh water. We have more than enough power for the site, about 14 megawatts of installed power currently and backup power on site when you only need about 6. We have on-site assay labs to expedite assaying of our samples. The mine itself, through the long lifespan, it's had probably about 6 independent declines put on, so it's got about 30 to 40 kilometres of underground infrastructure in place already over these high-grade loads, which we'll go through in a minute. And because of the stage when it was just packed up and put into care and maintenance, there's still about $6 million worth of critical spares. So there's 2 years worth of mill balls, mill liners, mill belts, everything's just there waiting to pull the trigger and restart again. The site itself covers about 400 square kilometres, multiple styles of mineralisation. Historically, about 100 million ounces silver equivalent has been mined out of it. So 80 to 1 ratio, so that's about 1.2, 1.3 million ounces gold equivalent pulled out at about 7 grams per tonne out of it historically. Multiple mineralisation styles. So the main one I'm going to talk about is our low sulphidation epithermal deposit that we have. So it's your traditional gold-silver only system, but we also have VMS deposits and your traditional polymetallics in there as well. The mineralised system, which we'll get onto in a minute, is the actual true scale of what we saw in the system itself. So a quick overview. This was post yesterday's hiccup in the market, but we're currently trading about $80 million market cap, about $10 million in the bank. We haven't been idle, so since acquisition we've made multiple new discoveries on a site, as I said, is 30 years old, which you'd think would be well picked over. We've doubled the resource in that time, and we have more multiple resource updates coming over the next, this quarter and the following quarter as well. A lot of familiar faces to everyone here, so very good pedigree to the board. So we have Ray Shorrocks, who was with the company early days when it was Mitre Mining, is still non-executive chair. Dave Southam has joined the board recently, and he's also consulting and assisting with daily days. Michael Naylor, Sue Parsons, assisting with the company. Myself, my history, I started in the goldfields here with a junior exploration company called Saracen Minerals back in the day and went through the journey to Northern Star, and then recently just left about a year ago to come to Andean Silver. Damien Kerber, our COO, he went on a trip to Chile 25 years ago and has stayed in that region ever since, so he's had worked with a lot of major companies through that time. Just briefly touch on silver. So when we started this journey, we spent the first 3 months identifying what commodities we really want to go into for the future, and we identified rapidly that silver was the next growth commodity. So I think the key takeaway here is that, you know, everyone knows photovoltaics, so solar panels, growth industry, what they're using. It's also used in water purification systems. It's the most conductive metal in the world. It's more than copper. It's used in medical because for its sanitary and biomedical properties, and of course your standard currencies. What people don't usually know is that we can consume about 1.2 billion ounces of silver per annum, but we only mine 1 billion. So we're in a 200 million ounce deficit. Where that comes from, you can see the LME stocks, COMEX, Shanghai, and those. So it's basically that deficit comes from vault stocks. There's only 5 years of vault stocks remaining in the world before we have that deficit actually come to market without any new, that's assuming solar stays flat. So in the next 5 years, you can see probably a dramatic increase of silver price to meet that deficit. And if you go by a Sprott, it'll be somewhere around 100 US an ounce, which will be excellent. Chile. So why do we pick Chile? Well, Chile is one of the premier mining districts in the entire world. It's number 1 in copper, number 2 in lithium, number 2 in molybdenite, and number 4 in silver. Major companies invested through there: Anglo, Kinross, Pan American, London, SQM, Codelco, all the big boys. They're actually one of the world leaders in renewable technology at the moment. They have their target of 2030 to be 70% renewable in the country, and the entire mining industry will be 50% renewables by that time as well, and they're well and truly on track to meet that. So it's a really world-class district. The mining infrastructure is outstanding. It's like working in WA. The project itself, it sits on the, so it's a bit, deceptive. So the blue side is Chile, the other side is Argentina. So we are about 10 kilometres inside the border on the Chilean side of the border, but we're sitting in the area, this grey area is called the Deseado Massif. So there's some big players in there. So you've got Cerro Negro with Newmont, Cerro Vanguardia, AngloGold Ashanti, you've got Hochschild Mining at San Jose, Pan American at Cerro Moro, and Manatiel, and a whole heap of others. So the district itself, it's probably 400 or 500 kilometres long. It's got roughly about 30 million ounces sitting in the ground there. So it's a major world-class mining district. So getting into our mine itself. So as I said, the complex itself, we have about 400 square kilometres of tenure over the ground itself, broken into 2 mining districts, which we'll touch on, the Cerro Barra and Laguna Verde area. So there's 16 past operating mines in that area. The vein system, which, you don't really understand the scale when you sit on the ground when you say the veins on surface are 26 kilometres by 26 kilometres area that we're trying to target here. And again, multiple mineralisation styles. The processing facility is on warm idle, so it's turned over monthly. It was last fully operated in 2022, so it's ready to go itself. The concentrate is actually one of the best concentrates that you can probably produce. It runs about 1.2% silver and 200 grams per tonne gold. Glencore previously took control of it. The concentrate, you blend down their poor quality concentrates. The tails itself is effectively one being used for road base. The infrastructure, I'll touch on in a minute when I get to the next slide, but we have everything in place. So mine administration, warehouses, maintenance labs, assay labs, core logging facilities, established roads, power networks, deep water port 100 kilometres away. So it's all ready to go. The purchase, when we purchased it, there was also some underground mining equipment, ancillary equipment. We have our own drill rigs on site, surface mining equipment, ROM loading equipment, warehouse mill spares, about 4 million US worth of critical infrastructure and spares there. So it is literally just ready to go. So that's it there. So for a mill that's 30 years old, it's kept in a shed, 10 degrees ambient temperature and fed by snow melt. So it's one of the best quality mills I've actually seen. I've seen a lot of goldfields mills with less age and very dodgy. But the site itself, so you can see there we have the crusher, standard float crusher, into the float plant, offices, assay labs, stores, HV, and power networks in place. You can see the open pit just to the left of it that was mined by Core Mining. I think the key to operating these areas, just touch on briefly, is that social licence to operate, which we're establishing in present. So our recent one we've just put out probably last week was that we've just sponsored the archaeological preservation off our site to the west of 3,500-year-old cave art inside the broader system. Rehabilitation, so you can see the picture on the bottom right there, used to be a 200-man camp back a number of years ago, so fully rehabilitated. So progressive rehabilitation, preservation, and social programs, which include sponsoring geology students from University of Santiago. We've recently donated a series of pumps to the local community to supply fresh water now to them, and a lot of other things. We also sit on the Regional Development Council for the entire district. So picture, Tasmania. We sit on the Development Council for that, which drives the 10-year infrastructure plan of what we require, road upgrades, port access, all that sort of stuff, renewable power networks that require for that mine to go. We're also talking to the local TAFE to drive what employment is required for the mine to restart. So getting all the jobs in place for trades, heavy vehicle mechanics and that for future restart. Critically, we have excellent support from the actual government all the way to the community. Our CEO walks down the town and it gets stopped constantly of asking when this mine wants to restart. back in its day, it supplied about 70% of the entire revenue of the district. So it would be the primary employer in the entire ASEAN region, which is equivalent size of Tasmania. Stepping in now, so we've got two districts. So this is the first district, Laguna Verde, which holds the milling infrastructure, which is that blue dot, the TSF right next to it, and you can see a whole series of these veins running through. Critically, this system, if any geos in the room, it's a low sulfidation gold system that's been weathered to the boiling zone. So you're finding these bonanza grades of, you know, the first results there come straight to surface where typically you have to find them. So 3.4% silver, 169 grams per tonne gold and veins on surface. So these are literally across the entire district just sitting on surface, just tripping over them effectively. The resource itself, for our 50 million ounces, we inherited the open pit resource previously at Tatao, 25 million ounces silver equivalent. Within the first month, we've doubled it with the Delia and the Koita lode. So scale-wise, that Koita vein we'll touch on is 1.4 kilometres long of just a solid vein. So, you know, for the Bellevue guys, it's like having the Deacon sitting there type of thing. Historically, we're going through about 30 years worth of data and rebuilding this resource from the ground up. So while we've only put those two in there, we're going through and re-evaluating all these independent mines. So all of these are independent undergrounds established in 2015, 2016. The Trankie, Yunkos, Tema, Condor, so all this, trying to bring it into a resource of what is actually in the ground and what we purchased in February. We're still trying to establish that baseline effectively. At the same time, we're drilling some of the more remote locations like the Pegaso Cristal area, where you've got vein swarms that are 150 metres wide over a kilometre on surface, broadly spaced drilled. It just needs that extra drilling to bring it into maiden resources going forward. So that's our plan, is just to consolidate that first district before we step out into the next one. So starting with the pit now, stepping in a bit more. So the pit itself is probably more gold over silver. So, you know, it's sort of that broad sense, broad breccia, whereas the others are narrow vein sort of thing. So any restart mine plans will focus on having that base load with your high-grade underground feed, lots of levers to pull that you're not constrained to any one area. The pit itself, the gold hits in at 35 metres at 2.75 gold, 43 metres at 2.5, 37 at 6.8 grams per tonne gold. So literally, the pit crest is right next to your crusher. So this would form the base load of any restart, sorry. Then into the high-grade underground. So this is the first one, the Delia mine itself. So this infrastructure was put in place between 2013 and 2017. So it's all your standard 5x5 sort of declining. Long hole stoping on the levels, so 10 metre spacing between your levels. Grades themselves, you see, it's pure gold silver system. So last holes, 1.25 at 7,000 grams per tonne silver and an ounce gold. 5.5 at 865 grams per tonne silver and 23 gold. So we've got the gold and we've got the silver to go with it. Scale of this thing, typically they're only 200 metres below surface, so very, very shallow systems. The resource that we have over this is one of our resources we put in. When I said the drill investment that was put in previously, all those pierce points were historic drilling. All we've had to do is come back, re-evaluate to bring it into resource, so it's a zero-cost resource growth at the present time. All of our resources as well, critically quoted, have been cookie-cut all those workings out. So we don't class remnant resources in anything that we talk about. Saying that, there are still levels that haven't been mined. They've developed, but they haven't actually stoped them. We'll get to them when we actually want to start mining as bonuses. Koita lode going forward. I said this is one of the primary lodes, 1.4 kilometres end to end, very linear, down 300 metres maximum. Previous operators punched the decline out, got it to a certain point, and never completed to get to the next ore body out there. And again, last hole on the run, 3.1 metres, 1,300 grams and 10 gold. So again, the system is still there, still keep going, we've just got to chase it down and develop it. So these will form the high-grade kickers in the base load of the mine. When I talked about it before, we were drilling a Pegaso lode. So this is one of the first maiden drill campaigns that we put in place. So historic vein system running through, hitting geology unit, blowing out along that geology unit basically. So that plane is effectively that brown area through there only, not including those high grade zones. What I take away on this one is the actual strike. It's 600 metres end to end by 300 metres end to end. So it's just one piece of a 20-piece puzzle that we have to put together. But we've put holes, that distance there is about 100 metres down plunge, and we've extended the ore body a further 100 metres with 5.8 metres at, well, gold equivalent for those, 10 grams per tonne gold equivalent. So the ore body's there and it's just getting better and better at depth. This is only 600 metres of a surface expression of about a 1 kilometre strike that we've tested so far. That's just what we know. So I'll step on to now of what we saw in the project for going forward. So this vein system, Cristal, it's about 1 kilometre from the processing plant, next to a road that's been driven on every second day for 20 years. About 3 months ago, as we discovered this new vein system extension to it. So grades on surface, you can see 3.9% silver equivalent. Soil channel samples on the true width vein there of 0.6 at 1.1% silver equivalent, 0.5 at 2% silver equivalent. Might seem narrow, but when you put it in perspective, you bulk it out, that's a 2 metre wide ore body at 2 ounces a tonne gold equivalent. So even though it's narrow, it's got the grade to support it. The next area I'll touch on, stepping out 7 kilometres away from the mine up to the Cerro Bayo area. So historically, core mining mined this area at Cerro Bayo. That's a 2 kilometre long underground, about 500 metres wide. They put 1 kilometre drives out to that Marcella lode there. It was the only blind target found in the area when they're drilling for water bores. Everything else, and you'll note, has only got veins discovered where it's not undercover. So critically, that's what we're going to look at doing next, is linking all these kilometre-long strikes that go undercover as well to link these veins together. Yesterday, and again, this is one of those new discoveries, that green line running through there is the main highway running from town to the mine site, the district road. New discovery as well, this Claudia Rail West area was discovered probably about 6 months to 9 months ago. It's a 1.4 kilometre vein running 8,000 grams per tonne and 100 grams gold on surface. So again, sitting there waiting for new discoveries. Critically, 1.5 kilometres sitting from a historic mine. So this ground hasn't been walked on for probably 20 years until we've taken control of it and making these new discoveries within the first little time. What we put out yesterday, so just some of the hits themselves. So I've got a picture next we'll show you. So the Vita Madre, Vita Segunas, this is a 4 kilometre by 1.5 kilometre vein system sitting in just a big geology graben structure. So we've got the Claudia vein bound on one side of the structure and the Rail West down through the Percheron vein through here as a second. Critically, again, surface outcropping veins, up to 3,500 silver equivalent, 1,500 silver equivalent, so bonanza at surface. So these things can be open pitted and then taken underground in the future. So example of some of the veins on surface. So the Rail West, it's only 0.5, but it's 2,500 grams per tonne, and that one goes for about 500 metres on surface. You can see the Vita Madre vein sitting on the other side, so that's the scale of that vein sitting on surface. And the Percheron vein, it's a big zone coming up, not drill tested at depth, and you see the Vita Madre sitting in the distance, that brown stain coming down the hillside. So these are exploration targets that haven't been tested historically that we're planning to get into. So that's what we have directly at the mine site. Step out now one little bit. Los Domos is sitting south of our mining area, down through here. So critically, it's not a separate project. It's the 26 kilometre strike extension of what we have sitting at Cerro Bayo. So you can see Los Domos, that broken back ridge sitting on surface, that's probably about 1.5 kilometre trend of it. It's more polymetallic, so you're getting, you're still getting 8 metres, but it's 250 silver, 20% lead, 7% zinc, gold, with your copper credits as well. So this will be factored into that regional exploration play going forward. So, when I talk about scale, 26 by 26 kilometres of vein outcrop across surface. Next, just hanging up our sleeve, we also have a VMS deposit. Never had a hole put into it, and it's running 20% copper on surface. So it's got about a kilometre outcrop on surface with alteration and never had a hole put into it in veining. So this will be our next exploration project that we get into. So it's probably more of for those who know, a Hod Maden style for SSR in Turkey, so VMS overlaid with polymetallic resources. So that's sort of the true scale of what we're looking at here, being the only mining company in that area of Chile on that side of the border, with those mines sitting across the border of Newmont and Anglo and that scale. We're in a very good position to actually consolidate and get that district humming really, really well. Just touch on the news flow. So I said we haven't been idle with all the news coming out. There's a lot of work going on in the background at the moment. Just on the typical things that you'll want to see feeding into scoping studies, the social aspects of the mine, and re-establishing our position down through there after a long, long period of time. So we've got a resource update planned in, well, this quarter, so between now and the end of September, and we've also got another one planned for December. These resource updates are just trying to build that base case resource before we even put our hole into it. So given that it's already existing drilling, it's going to be extremely low cost resource growth at the present time before we then start growing our own resources and extending. All of those will then feed into future scoping studies when we feel we have the critical base load required. So even though the mill is on warm idle, it's 500,000 tonnes per annum, we're not locked into that scale. If we find more resources than that mill can actually feed, we won't hesitate building that mill, upgrading the mill to actually feed into that resource itself. So yeah, even though we can restart tomorrow, that's not our plan. It's the same project as the other companies in the group, the Bellevues, the Fireflies, is actually grow the resource, see what you have, and then build the mine around that resource. Thank you.